I sign my name like I'm cutting a rope. One stroke. Another. Done. The attorney exhales as if I've released him from a spell. Cassandra watches with a flinch. I don't give her. She expects begging, a last-minute speech about love or houses or the taste of Sunday coffee. I slide the papers back across the table and stand. Take the house, I say. Take the plates. Take the framed smiles. I'm traveling late. Perch in tilts, amused and mean. You'll come crawling back when the world reminds you who you are. That's the plan, I say. I'll let the world know. The door mix shut behind me. October heat sits on Los Angeles like a hand on a fevered brow. The air tastes like asphalt, citrus peel, and second chances. I walk until the lawyer's building is a glittering afterthought and my heartbeat has a steady drumline. One life just ended. Good. I need both hands free for the one I came back to live. I don't go home. Home is a museum of things I bought to feel permanent. I go to the Writers Guild on Fairfax and ask the frontline clerk the kind of question that either gets you a form or a path. I'm researching registrations, I say. Specifically something dark, serial murders, moral rot, a city that eats people whole. A procedural that isn't a procedural. 7 sins. 7 signatures. The clerk gives me a look like I'm auditioning for a choir that practices at midnight. He checks the database. The screen glow paints his face a ghoul minus green. He scrolls. He frowns. He scrolls again. Nothing that matches your exact description, he says. Variations, sure. But that exact title? That exact angle? He shrugs. If you're worried it's taken, it isn't. I thank him and step outside into the sunlight that feels suddenly like stage lights. Every muscle in my body knows the cue. I buy a used typewriter from a shop that smells of oil and old paper. The owner tells me junk about Hemingway and how keys bite different when you mean it. I mean it. I carry the machine to a cheap motel off Sunset with a bedspread that looks like a migraine and a desk that wobbles until I wedge a folded matchbook under one leg. I roll in a sheet. I put my fingers where time remembers. Logline first, a city of rain and rot. Our relentless killer carving sermons into flesh. To detectives, one old and bone-minus iron, one young and losing his soul by degrees. 7 sins, 7 crimes, a finish that refuses to comfort. The logline locks tight and cold. I chase it with a 1- page. 2 pages. 10. Characters breathe. The killer doesn't rant, he preaches. The old detective knows the sound of failure. The young one loves the city the way you love a tiger, careful, hopeful, stupid. I don't stop for dinner word out. When I need a jolt, I read the last paragraph out loud and let my own voice dare me to keep up. I've lived this day before, once in another life, and it crushed me. I handed pages to smiling desks and waited for permission. Not this time. Pages are ammunition now. I don't wait to be invited to my own war. At midnight, I switch from words to numbers. If you want people in suits to praise your art, give them a spreadsheet to hide it behind. I sketch a budget with enough reality to pass the sniff test principal photography in a city that can play itself for 8 hours practical effects. Not CG, a music budget that buys dread, not a pop single. Mid-30s on millions. We can make pain look elegant for less than it costs to buy a laugh. Then casting math. You don't just dream faces, you cost them. I write to names that fit the gravity of the thing. Brad Pitt, charismatic but not yet untouchable Morgan Freeman, gravitas that speaks before he opens his mouth. I pencil numbers that are both ambitious and not suicidal. If an executive asks why, I can answer with a table, not a sigh. I punch holes in the motel wall with drawing pins and hang the plan like I'm mapping a manhunt. Script pages. Budge etranges. Shoot schedule. Lookbook clippings, wet streets, sodium lights, churches that smell like dust and grief. The room takes the shape of the movie until I can stand in the doorway and see it playing. Between 2 and 3. I hit the pit wall where most people fold. I brew coffee in a machine that looks like a science fair and tastes like old pennies. I stare at the last scene. Every idiot in this town wants a happy ending. We will not give them one. We will give them the ending that fits the sermon. The point isn't to soothe, it's to scar. And because I remember, because I lived the version where I treated that resolve like a suggestion, I put the sentence on paper like a contract. The ending does not blink. By dawn, the machine keys have stamped crescent moons into my fingertips. I take a shower that never really gets hot and dress like war means business casual. I slide the script into a Brad-bound binder, the budget and schedule into a crisp packet, and the proof - intent into my spine. The 6 majors have lobbies designed to make you feel small and grateful. The security guards are trained to be polite until you remember you're nobody. I start with 1 anyway because the ritual matters. You confront a god to remind yourself they bleed like anyone else. Leave it with us, the assistant says, nails immaculate, smile bare of all nutritional value. Of course I say, as if I don't already know what the phrase means in this dialect, we will fire your dream under someday, beneath forgotten. Studio 2 gives me a bottle of water so cold it hurts my teeth. Studio 3 won't validate parking. Studio 4 offers a general meeting in 3 weeks if I can send a softer take. Studio 5 is renovating their slate, which is a synonym for no that sounds like feng shui. Studio 6 really loves the energy and would love it more if I changed the ending. Outside, the sky has drawn an indifferent veil of high clouds. The city is a soundstate where every minute costs and the meter never stops. I sit on a low wall and open the binder at random. The middle breathes like a long, steady, grim I'll live. The ending stares back at me with the calm of a murderer in church. Alright then, if the mountain is granite, you find the go path. You can break Hollywood in two ways from above, with money and a friend who signs checks the way a priest signs absolutions, or from the side, with a director who turns everything he touches into a demand. If you deliver that director a script that fits his bones, the world moves. You don't ask. You make alignment inevitable. I walk to a shop that prints letterhead for small kings. The proprietor mixes inks like a Somler talk stand-ins. I buy heavy envelopes, smooth as threats, in a stack of personalized paper just this side of arrogant. I draft a letter in the cafe across the street, black coffee and a croissant that tastes like regrets. David, I don't need your chair. I need your eye. This is a case file for a city that understands sermons better than it understands love. It ends the only way it can, without blink, without apology. If you read the first 5 pages and don't feel the weather change, toss it. If you do feel it, please call. 'Cause gray. I do a sec and set for new line, Robert. This is a small movie that will leave big footprints. The budget is disciplined. The ending is uncompromising. The audience will talk about it in parking lots like they've been warned. If you want something polite, this isn't it. If you want something that becomes a flag, turn the page. I courier both packages the same afternoon because fate prefers speed. For Fincher, I include a lookbook that defines the color of rain. For New Line, I tuck in a page that converts an ease into numbers, weekend comps, slot strategy, counter-programming, angles. This town prays to emotion on Sunday and spreadsheets on Monday. I'm bilingual. At New Line's building, I watch Robert shake across the lobby like a man whose agenda always fits in his inside pocket. Assistants orbit him with the neat panic of our traffic. He is not a man you ambush with a hallway's pitch unless you're begging to be remembered as a cautionary tale. I let him pass. I smile at the receptionist like I already lived 2 floors up. The receptionist glances at the envelope and then at me. Do you want a receipt? I want the right person to read the first page, I say. If they don't want the second, that's on me. She considers me for half a heartbeat and bends the rules no one wrote down. Give me 20 minutes. I sit in a chair designed to punish spines and watch a movie poster argue with another on the opposite wall. 20 minutes later, she returns with an expression people reserve for a kick that lands cleaner than expected. Someone upstairs read the first page. She says, they want the rest. I don't make a habit of playing messenger, but I'm told to say the following words, don't you dare change the ending. I don't fist pump. I don't grin. I let the moment register as calibration, not conquest. Then, I won't, I say. Outside, the sky brightens as if the city has adjusted a gel on a light. I walk down to the curb and call the motel to extend my stay by a week. The clerk sounds like I'm asking for permission to grow a second head. I pay on a card that will start to whine if I feed it too often. I don't care. Money is a tool, debt is a whip you plan to burn. Back in the room, I refine the beats that need to sing louder. I shave dialogue down to bone and nerve. I write a scene where the young detective laughs at a joke that isn't funny because it stops him from crying. I write the sermon that makes the killer sound like a monastic accountant tallying sins. I refuse to let any character explain themselves when silence indexes them harder. When the phone rings, it's the motel front desk transfigured into deliverance. A courier, the clerk says, left a note. For, hold on, say ye and Chaffin. It's a name that puts oxygen in the room. I unfold the note with careful hands the way you unfold news you don't want to crease. Calls, the page is cut. David started reading and forgot to breathe. We're not blinking at the end. If you're free at 10, boom, tomorrow, come by. We'll talk tone, schedule, and the church you want this to feel like. See ya. The auditorium of my chest hands and claps once. Then it goes quiet so I can hear the work. I don't call anyone. Who would I call? Cassandra, to let her know the world remembered me faster than she predicted? No. Victory is loudest when it doesn't need witnesses. I eat something that might have been food before time and the microwave conspired, and then I go walking. Los Angeles in the evening smells like jasmine and brake pads. On Sunset, couples argue their way toward kisses and waiters judge mortgage applications by watches. I don't look like a man who has a meeting that can move the tectonic plates. I look like a guy in a shirt that needs a better life. I pass a church with an unlocked door and go inside because the script keeps talking about confession and I want to hear the acoustics. The air is cool in the way that understands grief. I sit, eyes open, because I don't ask for miracles I already worked for. I make a list instead. Non-minus negotiable S. The ending. The weather as a character. The city as accusation, not backdrop. The old detective's dignity. The young detective's innocence dying not in a blast, but in a whisper. I leave the church exactly as I found it, except now it knows my footsteps. Back at the room, I set the alarm for 7 and lay down on the bedspread that looks like a map of the wrong country. Sleep arrives like a technician, efficient, silent, merciful. It leaves the same way at 6:40 minus 5 because my body wants to rehearse the day 5 times before it starts. Shower. Sure. Tie only because it makes me feel like I'm loading in tenter round my neck. I pack the binder, the budget, the schedule, and a page of questions that a fool would keep in his head. Questions aren't for improvisation, they're for assassination. On the curb, the day is younger than me and trying to prove something. I let a taxi have my destination and my calm. We slide through the city's arteries, past the billboards that pretend stories are 80 feet high because that's the altitude Weird Out can't see. At a red light, the driver looks at me in the rearview mirror. Big, weaving. The right one, I say. He nods like he hopes the city is kind. The light goes green. We move. In the elevator, I read the note again because repeating a blessing does not diminish it. At the right floor, the doors open on a hallway with the same working hum as a studio just before something explodes into being. See, Ian meets me with a handshake that says she knows what a day cost, even when you pretend you don't count. Coffee, she asks. Yes, I say. Black enough to argue. She smiles. That we can do. We walk into a conference room where the table looks like a strip of runway. A wall of glass shows the city pretending to nap. David Fincher sits at the far end, sleeves rolled, pen in hand, pages marked with the exactitude of a surgeon preparing for a cut he's dreamed about making. He looks up. For a second, there's no ritual, no theater, no signaling, just to people who care about the same weather. Your cause, he says. I am. You don't want to direct, he says, not a question. I want the film to exist more than I want my name where yours should be. He taps the last page, the one that refuses to kiss and make up. Good, he says, because this ending, if they try to soften it, we're leaving. Together. I sit. I take the pen he hands me like it's a blade and a key at once. The city beyond the glass shifts, the light just enough to make the conference table glow. Let's build a church, I say. Let's build a church, he agrees. The clock on the wall clicks to 10 o'clock. Blue. The door closes with a small, committed sound. The work begins. The day turns. The life I came back for starts to roar. I am no one's apology. I am the man who remembered in time. Tone isn't a mood, it's a contract. We open the binder and talk like carpenters. Precise frames, David says. No flailing camera. If the city is chaos, we answer with control. Control builds dread, I say. Rain as punctuation, not wallpaper. Light that feels like judgment. Sound design that tells the truth before anyone does. Dialogue, he says. Cut to nerve, I answer. People don't declare themselves. They leak. Say, E and Raw's 3 columns on a legal pad tone, schedule politics. We fill the first in minutes restraint over hysteria, sermons over rants, ending without anesthesia. For schedule, we talk in bands, not absolutes, enough days to breathe, not enough to wander. For politics, we don't write words. Write ending and circle it twice. New line at 11 minus 30? So, already in hand. Robertson. Development wants to hear the argument. The argument is the film, David says. And the math that lets it exist, I add. I'll carry the numbers. You carry the weather. He nods once, the way a surgeon nods before a cut he's rehearsed on air. Don't let anyone sell us comfort. We're not a bakery, I say. We're a church. 11:20 minus 5. The hall outside the conference room hums with people who've learned to walk fast without spilling coffee. Posters line the walls like trophies for bets that paid off. We are here to sell a different wager that fear, framed correctly, becomes a mirror the audience can't stop staring into. Robert Shea enters with the relaxed quickness of a man who's late to nothing and on time for everything. He shakes hands like he's reading knuckles for intent. The development head sits to his left, pen poised as if the ink is expensive. Page 1, Robert says. We place it in front of him and stop talking. Let the words do the work they were built for. He reads the first paragraph, then the second. The room compresses to the size of his focus. He flips to page to like a decision. City a sermon, he says, almost to himself. Not bad. Not polite, I say. He looks up, eyes amused by honesty. Budget? I slide the 1 minus page discipline line items. Rain, bill, practical. Mike's designed to look expensive without being so. Post that respects sound like a character. Mid minus 30s. The money goes on screen, not in craft service. The development head taps a penciled corner. Casting pressure? 2 names that turn gravity on, I say. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman. Both are right for the moral geometry. Brad's heat draws eyes, Morgan's weight keeps them. Attachments? Robert asks. Not yet, I say. But we have a call at 10 tomorrow that can become a meeting. Our leverage is the ending. The ending, he says, and flips to the last page, the one that refuses to grin for anyone's comfort. He reads. He doesn't blink. When he finishes, he lays the page flat and aligns its pages with an old habit. If this gets softened, it becomes homework, he says. If it doesn't, it becomes a flag. We're planting the flag, David says. Robert leans back. The chair obliges without squeak. Okay, Bring me one attachment or a clear path to one. Bring me a slot strategy that doesn't beg for a summer crowd. Give me 5 comps that prove audiences like to be accused. I pass him a sheet counter programming logic. Quiet minus month advantages, examples of dark films that ate loudly because they weren't competing with fireworks. We don't need a parade. We need a parking lot where people argue with the sky after the credits. He laughs once. The sound a gate makes when it opens without complaint. You know how to sell your weather. Good. Development will shepherd. Finance will frown and do math. Find me your faces. Unchanged ending, David says. Robert taps the last page again. If anyone here asks you to kiss it, tell them I said we're not that kind of studio. We exit with nothing in our pockets but a list in a tone that feels like permission wearing boots. In the elevator, I don't smile. I inventory. 1 path, 2 allies. 3 time is now a hostile witness who might testify for us if we keep our questions clean. Down on the street, the city squints like it's trying to see the future. See, Anne's phone vibrates. She reads, then hands it to me. Brad's team can read tonight. If he responds, breakfast tomorrow. You want me on the call? She asks. I want your name on the email and your sense in the room, I say. We open with tone, not campaign. Brad doesn't need us to sell him himself. He needs to see we won't blink when it gets dark. We commandeer a corner table at a nearby cafe that forgives laptops. David marks 3 scenes with a single line through each. These are the proof minus of minus life pages. If an actor can't live here, he can't live in the film. I adjust the dialogue like you adjust a suit before a trial. Remove the jewelry. Let the bones do the talking. The young detective makes a joke he hates before he finishes it. The old detective lets us silence convict a room. The killer's sermon never raises its voice, the cruelty is in the calm. At 6, the pages go out PDFs that carry our intent through cables to rooms where assistants strides the night. We wait like professionals busy. C and builds a preliminary schedule that breathes around weather. David lists directors of photography whose frames look like decisions. I write a 1- paragraph note to Morgan Freeman's team that doesn't try to direct his dignity. 10p. A reply from Brad's side, he's up late. He started reading. Don't make other plans for the morning. A second later, a question, is the ending negotiable? I type no and delete it. Too blunt and you sound brave because you're reckless. Too soft and you sound hopeful because you're scared. I rate it's the spine. If we change the ending, the body collapses. We're protecting the film you'd sign. The typist on the other end answers with a short mercy understood. Midnight is a thin hour. The city whispers behind sides and the occasional siren. I walk to the motel with a purpose that makes the neon look cooperative. In my room, the wall of pages and lookbook images glows like we left the clouds on. I pull down to pictures and pin to new ones up, faces in reflected rain that don't look like actors, they look like people learning how much it costs to keep breathing. Sleep runs at me and misses by inches. I lie awake, then rehearse the morning. Questions first, then budget rhythms. Then a reminder, never apologize for the ending. Apologizing invites negotiation. 7. Boom. Finds me already dressed, like the day owes me rent. Coffee, that argues. Binder checked. Pen, that writes like it enjoys being heavy. In the taxi, the driver asks what I do. I tell the truth loudly. I say, and he laughs like anybody who's ever tried that in this town. The lobby where we meet Brad has low chairs designed for people who don't mind feeling small. We choose the edge of the couch like we're prepared to stand. He arrives with a baseball cap and a focus that ignores its own fame. He shakes David's hand like he means it. Mine like he plans to weigh me on a scale he trusts. Good morning, he says. Your pages kept me up. Sorry and thank you, I say, in that order. He sits. I'll cut to it. I like the rut. I like the weather. I like that the killer isn't clever, he's disciplined. I like that the city is complicit. I don't like performative darkness. Is this just bleak for sport? It's bleak for honesty, David says. Not for effect. And the ending? Brad asks. It refuses to lie, I say. It respects the sermon it's been preaching for 2 hours. If we blink, we confess we didn't mean it. He considers that eyes on the page like the words might flinch if he stares long enough. I've been offered versions of this where the last 10 minutes are a pep talk. This isn't that. It isn't, David says. Brad glances at the budget page. You're not buying a cushion. We're buying focus, I say. The money is there to make the truth look expensive. He smiles, not a grin or recognition. If I come in, I need a partner on the other side who doesn't panic when the studio does what studios do. Robert read the last page, I say. He told us to keep it. That helps, he says, and the room rotates a degree closer to center. Okay, I'm not promising. I'm saying I want to see the church you're talking about. Table read this week. If it feels like the thing you swear it is, we talk deals. Deal, David says. We'll have the pages ready. Brad stands, stretches the stiffness out of a night spent with words, and looks at me like we're about to share a burden instead of a headline. Don't get clever, he says. Get true. We will, I say. After he leaves, the air expands as if we've been holding our breath and forgot. See, and is already texting new line positive. Table read pending. Brad engaged. The reply comes faster than office hours should allow. Will hold space. Bring us a voice memo afterward. And don't you dare touch the ending. The day becomes a metronome. Calls to Freeman's team with scene selections designed to honor gravity. A quiet lunch where we pick the church set like we're choosing a witness. A trip to a wardrobe house to run a fingertip over fabrics that suggest lives, not costumes. Back to the room where I replace one line that was trying to hard with silence that didn't. At 4, the phone rings with a voice that has been in more movies than most small nations. Morgan Freeman's manager, patient and precise. Morgan appreciates the restraint, he says. He has one concern: dignity without magic. He doesn't want wisdom to be a trick. It isn't, I say. He's not a saint. He's a man who's learned expensive lessons. Good. The manager says, we're reading tonight. If it's hottest in the morning, we'll talk about calendars. Calendars. The city's true religion. You don't worship idols here, you worship availability. We hang up with a promise dressed like a maybe. Fine. I don't need confetti. I need a clock. Evening folds down over Los Angeles. The first stars are actually planes. The last good light of the day lays a hand on the room and says, work while you can. I add a paragraph of stage direction that communicates how the rain is supposed to feel without instructing the sky. I cut an adjective that thought it was a noun. I move a comma and a heartbeat follows. At 9, I step outside to buy a water and find silence humming in the space between the city sentences. I think of Cassandra telling me I'd crawl back. Funny thing about crawling, if you aim it at the right wall, it's just a way to start climbing. Back inside, the note from C and glows on my phone table read locked for Thursday. We're in a room that listens. A second message from New Line Finance wants a revised cash flow with rain costs model. Can you deliver by noon? Yes, I text. We'll put a price on weather. I sit, crack my knuckles without ceremony, and build a sheet no one will ever frame. Rain hours by day count, crew overtime model by scene density, contingency that is actually contingency, not fear. It's ugly work and it's beautiful because it buys us choices. When the last cell aligns, I feel something I trust more than hope, not luck. Alignment. I send the file. I close the laptop. I stand before the wall of the film we're making and whisper the only prayer I allow myself. Don't blink. The city answers with a far siren and a closer jasmine. I turn off the light. The movie keeps playing on the inside of my eyelids. That's fine. Sleep can catch up in the back half of my life. Right now, the front half needs me awake. Table reads or confession without the booth. No costumes. No lights. Just voices standing in the open to see if the soul shows up. We take over a rehearsal room with bad carpet and a better silence. Scripts crackle when they open. Brad sits forward, elbows on knees, the cap gone, the attention turned up past 12. Morgan arrives with that unhurried exactness that makes time behave. David stands, says nothing theatrical, and begins with the shortest sermon he owns: precision. Restraint. Truth. We read, Brad doesn't act the young detective so much as wear him like a weight vest, a touch too eager to fix a city that has memorized how not to be fixed. Morgan doesn't perform wisdom, he lets it breathe and occasionally cough. The killer sermon is read by a casting associate with a priest scum. No pyrotechnics. No pandering. After page 20, even the HVAC stops to listen. The laughs land where they're not jokes, just human relief. The silences land harder. When we reach the last page, the room does what it should. It stares at the ending like a verdict that knows your name. Brad closes his script. Don't ask me to smile at the end, he says. I won't. We won't, David says. Morgan taps the margin with a finger that has probably pointed at 1,000 bad ideas. Don't make me clever, he says. Make me correct. You are, I say. The agenting begins before the paper cools. Numbers are a different kind of dialogue, one where punctuation has a lobby. Brad's rep wants to talk quotes, box office history, and the kind of back end that turns participation into a life choice. Morgan's team is exact about dignity and calendar, gentle about money, lethal about schedule slippage. I knew this scene was coming. I wrote it in the motel with a pencil into aspirins. For in 2, I say to New Line on a call it involves 3 departments and 1 person whose job title is to say no while sounding like yes. For million for Brad, to for Morgan points that awake only after the film proves it deserves to. We're not buying names. We're buying gravity. Finance inhales like a cold pool. You're already in the 30s, someone says, do you want to make this or do you want to talk about making it? I want both, I say. We cut where the audience can't feel the blood loss. We don't cut muscle. We shuttle between rooms with and without windows. David takes the creative blows without ever making a sound that would read as flinch. I carry the math like a shield and hit with it when I have to. Robert listens as if listening is a tool you can sharpen. Attachments, he asks again. Brad is leaning in, Sion says, clear and unhurried. Morgan's reading again tonight. If they plant their feet, we're past gravity, we're in orbit. End of day, Robert says. Bring me positions, not promises. We bring him both. Brad's text arrives like a terse weather report. Time in if we protect the ending and shoot with control. Don't chase noise. Make the room loud by being quiet. Morgan's manager follows with a voicemail that sounds like a well-built bridge. Calendar permitting, we're positive. He appreciates that you don't write magic into wisdom. New lines. Conference room is the color of decisions. Development breaks out, the usual kitsch, unlists of comparables, dates with appetites, the mystery calendar that tells you which months like to eat hope and which months eat fear. I unfold a slot strategy that looks like we rehearsed the answer for a month. Don't feed summer, I say. Let it starve while everyone else throws fireworks. Go colder. September or October. We'll be the voice in a quiet room. Counter-program against spectacle with something that haunts. Comps? Development asks? Films that didn't ask permission, I say, laying down 5 titles and the numbers that prove memory is a kind of box office. Low competition. High conversation. Parking minus lot arguments. That's our marketing spend. People who can't stop talking on curbs. Robert leans back. Fine. Telf unanswer authorizing prep. We're not greenlit until the ink says we are. But if this train slows because we forgot to lay track, that's on us. Protect the ending. The word protect feels correct and heavy. We don't celebrate. We start the part of the job that turns music into money breakdowns, boards, deal memos, start dates, and the calendar math that rules this city like a weather system. The first note comes from a marketing mind that means well. They always mean well. That's the trick. Could you shoot us after option for the last scene? The email asks. Just for, flexibility. David is very still, which is his loudest register. He looks at me. I look at him. In another life, I bent here, rationalize that one extra set minus up can't hurt. In this one, I pick up the phone. If we shoot us after ending, I say to the room on the line, it exists. If it exists, it finds a throat. We're not building our own knife. Silence. Then a small, necessary laugh from Robert. Tell them we don't do training wheels, he says. If we crash, at least it's in the car we built. I send a 1- page memo titled an ON- an EGOTIIB, no ES to every person who can change my life by replying -all. Number 1 is the ending. Number 2 is the ending. Number 3 is the ending spelled differently. I include a single sentence that isn't negotiable either. If we soften the final 10 minutes, we confess that the first 100 were a lie. Paper trails are armor. Everyone loves a bold stand until a bad preview asks for a place to hide. I'm building us a place to stand. We scout the city with eyes that measure rain. Downtown offers wet alleys and concrete cathedrals. The permit office offers a list of don'ts that reads like a poem. No flooding intersections, no blocking buses, no angering neighbors who already hate productions more than Mondays. We find a block that can wear our weather and schedule the rained hours like we're summoning a season. Cinematographer meetings are a clinic in taste. Reels play, frames speak. David's note vocabulary could tune a piano. This, he says, tapping a sequence where shadow and shape argue without raising voices. Not moody moral. We shortlist people who don't confuse murky with deep. Sound is its own religion. We sit with a designer who treats silence like a drum and sirens like gossip. No jump line to scare cheating, I say. Our fear arrives on foot. We talk about the hum of fluorescent lights in rooms where hope retired. The wet whisper of soaked fabric. The animal sound a city makes at 3 in the morning when it remembers its crimes. Between meetings, I check my phone and find a text from Cassandra that starts as a question and ends as an accusation. Are you telling people you're making something? Trades called a friend? You'll regret this. I stare at the dots that say she's still typing and then at the ceiling that says I don't owe my past any present. I delete the screen and keep the lesson never feed what you don't want growing. Contracts arrive, items that make the thing legal. WGA deals. WGA realities. SAG specifics. I read faster than my eyes are comfortable admitting and circle language that looks like it was smuggled in during a lunch. David watches me mark pages like a surgeon watches an anesthesiologist. Anything that ruins us, he asks. Only if we sign it, I say, and we don't. The first production meeting feels like air traffic control. Department heads talk in their dialects, camera in frames, production in design and textures, wardrobe in histories, locations in miles, and forgiveness. I watch people smarter than me feed the same flame from 5 angles, and I have the thought you try not to say out loud, we could actually pull this off. Then comes the cold water that keeps hubris from breeding. Finance needs a revised cash flow again. Rain costs, night premiums, contingency for the contingency. I build the sheet a second time, clean and arguable. It's not a sword, it's a map. Weak and defend. Test screening whispers begin the way they always do, like rumors looking for hosts. Marketing floats the idea of a card that asks the audience if they prefer to leave less traumatized. We're not asking, I say. We sometimes ask, the marketing lead replies, polite as a scalpel. Not on this one, Robert says, saving us any mails and an ulcer. This one tells the audience how it feels. If they fight us, we'll win or we'll die honest. At lunch, Brad swings by the office unannounced, no entourage, a baseball cap backlit by a window that thinks it's a movie. He drops into a chair and reads the revised pages with his shoulders tighter, he says. Good. Don't let me hit easy pitches. I want the grounders that eat you alive. We can feed you those, David says. Morgan sends a note through his manager that reads like a steel beam inside a sentence. The older detective doesn't become sentimental. He becomes accurate. We adjust 3 lines and cut one that thought it was poetry. Our costume designer spreads reference boards like a magician who isn't hiding anything. Fabric that tells you a man hasn't slept. Shoes that say a person believes in running but knows he never runs fast enough. Ain't I not that's been in my too many times to still be patient. Nights bleed into days and back. I set alarms for problems no one has discovered yet. The motel room has turned into a war map with a bed in it. When sleep finds me, it does it quick, like it's a paramedic. The studio asks for a meeting labeled a LT-RNATIVES. The word doesn't frighten me, it irritates me. We file into a room with a polite screen and a less polite agenda. A younger exec clears his throat like he's practiced it. Can you shoot a version of the final scene where consequences aren't so terminal? He says, careful with his adjectives. Just to have, David repeats, as if testing the weight of the phrase. If we have it, it will be used. If it is used, the film is a hypocrite. Marketing is nervous, the exec says. Tell them to be scared of boredom, not honesty, I say. Robert ends the conversation because someone has to. No alt, he says. Not even without film in the camera. If we're building a church, we're not installing a gift shop in the back. When we leave, the hallway feels like bad weather that never learned your name. I lean against the wall and breathe the way athletes do after the bell. David watches me and raises one eyebrow, an entire paragraph in that small motion. We didn't blink, I say. We can't keep practicing not blinking, he says. We have to shoot. Prep speeds up the way gravity speeds stones. We lock a start date. Call sheets begin to exist as rumors of paperwork. The prop department sends me photos of the sermon notebooks, and I have to put them down because they feel like someone else's breath on my neck. That's how I know they're right. On the way out of the building that night, I pass a standing poster frame with a new 1- sheet inside. Someone else's movie, someone else's parade. A janitor is buffing the floor into a shine you could mistake for a lake. He glances up at me and nods like he recognizes the look on a person who is trying to carry a cathedral across a street. You building something? He asks. A church, I say. He considers that, smile quiet and real, then make sure the door's open. Every day, I say. Back at the room, I put on the kettle because coffee has turned into a habit. I'd still fight for in a custody hearing. I sit in front of the wall and cross out a line that was trying to be admired. I replace it with a sentence that would rather be believed. The phone rings. New line. Robert, we're done flirting, he says. Green light. Don't make me regret believing you. I won't, I say, and it doesn't feel like a boast. It feels like an invoice I've been wanting to pay. I text David we'll live. He replies, then tomorrow we stop talking about building a church. We open it, I send back. I sleep 3 hours that taste like victory and fear sharing a glass of water. Dawn punches the curtains without apology. I stand, crack my back, tie my intent around my neck, then put the binder in my bag like a relic. Outside, Los Angeles pretends to be innocent in the early light. That's fine. We know it's sermons. We're writing one more. Green light doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like a key that fits. We start before the sun remembers its job. Call time is a priest's hour, everyone quiet, everyone pretending coffee is courage. The rain towers are asleep in their metal like dragons that learned discipline. Cables braid the street. Age narrator murmurs a threat and a promise. David walks the block like he's memorizing a confession. I walk behind him with the schedule, the budget, and a spine that refuses to bend. First shot, he says, tapping a chalk mark that production has laid on wet asphalt. City exhales. Camera doesn't. Rain comes in on the cut, I say. Not like wither, like punctuation. He nods. Brad arrives with a hood up and a face that is already the detective's. Morgan steps out of a van, no umbrella, like water is part of the sentence. The cruel, it's collective attention. We're not here to impress each other. We're here to catch something that tries not to be seen. Roll sound, the mixer says. Sound speed. Roll camera. Speed. Mark. Scene 12. Alpha. Take 1. Action. Brad crosses the frame like a man listening for the part of the city that lies with a straight face. He stops. He looks up at rain that hasn't started yet. We hold the beat. Then the towers breathe. The street transforms. Not chaos. Judgment. David doesn't talk. He trims the moment in his head and lets the cut land on silence. Again, he says, not because it failed, but because we're learning the room. Take 2 moves like a prayer that someone dares to answer. We break for a reset and get our first visit from a different religion, the city inspector and a neighbor with the face of a person who has learned to hate trucks. The inspector checks the permits like they offended him in high school. The neighbor wants his driveway like a crusade. I need access, he says, and I need quiet. You can have one, I say, which saves your sanity. He blinks at the honesty then at the camera that currently sees his future. Access, he says. We reroute a grip truck and buy him coffee that tastes like an apology. The inspector cites clause numbers with the joyless precision of a metronome. We sign the extra form. He materializes from a folder the size of a weapon. He leaves knowing he didn't scare us. The neighbor waves, once like weary storm that remembered manners. Back on set, something essential fails the way essentials do when they sense a tension elsewhere. The generator coughs and dies. The street inhales the sudden quiet like a kind of grace. For a second, the department heads hover at the same height above panic. David looks at me. I look at the schedule. There's a moment 2 pages down that doesn't need a tower or a generator. It needs a face that knows the cost of honesty. Scene 20-3, I say. Window light. Morgan's side of the conversation. We steal it while we fix the dragon. David nods once. The 80 moves like a conductor whose orchestra just learned a new piece mid-minus performance. We strip down to the bones bounce board, a lens that loves truth, a boom op who can hold his breath. Morgan sits at a table that production design has lived minus in with an elegant cruelty. He touches the edge with 2 fingers like he's checking the pulse of the film. Action, David says, and the room happens. Morgan listens to a voice we'll record later and answers with accuracy, not wisdom. When he gets to the line where most actors reach for a look, he leaves it alone and lets the silence do the arresting. The crew holds, not because they're told to, but because air is heavier. Cut, David says softly, the way you hang up when the person on the other end is still talking. Keep that, I say. We were never losing it, he says. The generator returns to life with a shudder that sounds like a stubborn heart. We swing back into rain and asphalt. Brad hits a take where he laughs once at nothing and hates himself for it. It's a beautiful human betrayal of his own control. We keep it. We have to. Word crawls. It always does. A trade writer's assistant calls an assistant who calls another assistant, and suddenly the set has a guest who smells like ink. He asks for a quote without asking. David doesn't do theater for outsiders. I do the talking. This isn't a movie about cleverness, I say. It's about consequence. He wants more. I give him less. We're not blinking, I say, and walk away before anyone can mistake openness for access. By lunch, the street is an organism we can steer. The rain towers behave like Corbies who learned discipline from fear. The camera stops pretending to be a machine. Actors stop pretending to act. When we break, Brad pokes a fork at something the caterer calls food and looks at me like he's about to test a joint. Third act, he says, "You still refusing to fix me? I won't insult you with redemption," I say. "You get consequences. You get choice. Not a hug." "Good," he says. I don't bring the face for hugs. Morgan sits down beside us. No small talk, the way professionals say hello when the day already used up the words. "Don't let the music lie," he says. "Let it confess." "It will," I say. We're choosing a composer who knows guilt has a key. The afternoon is maps and muscle. The stunt team makes danger boring so the actors can make it personal. Sound sneaks microphones where pride won't notice. The prop master shows me the sermon notebooks. They're perfect in a way you wish they weren't tidy, chilling, meticulous. I sign off like I'm authorizing a crime. Maybe I am. An exec arrives with an umbrella and a theory. Could we try one where the rain is less accusatory? He asks, which is a sentence that deserves the weather it fears. The rain isn't weather, David says, patient as a razor. It's language. Language can whisper, the execs it jests. It is, I say. The shouting is the city. He leaves with the look of a person who has to report that adults are doing adult things. Good. At magic hour, we set the lens for a shot that only works if the city pretends to be a cathedral. The clouds cooperate like they want a credit. Brad steps into frame. The camera tracks like a decision being made. He lands on a mark he never saw and delivers half-full line like it cost him something he can't get back. The sun gives us a last, cold mercy and dies on cue. Cut, David says, and for a flicker, the set forgets to breathe. Then everyone remembers they're alive. In the truck, we watch dailies on a screen that has no right to carry this much weight. Rain doesn't look like rain. It looks like a verdict. Faces don't look like faces, they look like admissions. The crew murmurs in a dialect that only happens when people know they're not being lied to. The text from New Line arrives the way texts do when someone up the chain has already heard the whisper dailies look clean. Don't chase coverage. Keep the spine. Another from Robert, how's the ending? Still uncompromising? I send back the only answer that doesn't waste anyone's oxygen. It hasn't learned to smile. Night brings a different blessing. Problem publicity wants a still that suggests, not sells. We pick an image that understands hint and refuses spoiler. Brad in profile, rain like confession, a streetle twy that could pass for stained glass if you squint your conscience. The still lands in an inbox designed to feed the world's appetite 1 pixel at a time. Second day, different block. The city asks for tribute, permits patience, grace. We pay in checks and small kindness. A woman whose front step is suddenly a dolly track wants to know if movies ever make things better. Sometimes I say, mostly they hold a mirror. She watches us for an hour and decides mirrors have their uses. In the afternoon, a sound cue misbehaves. A fluorescent buzz eats dialogue like termites. We cut the fixtures light with a lamp that production found in a church basement and record a silence that sounds like judgment. When the line lands, I feel it behind my eyes. David lets the take sit on him for a beat and then says what we both know, that's the one. By midweek, the machine is a body with a single intent. Department heads speak in shorthand that hides whole novels. I stop counting small victories because they add up to one large one. The film is the film. No one is secretly building the version where the ending winks. Marketing tries again, this time with a smile. What about a social cut that hints someone might be saved? They ask, and a call that tries to load sugar into the gun. We're not trafficking hope we didn't turn, I say. The audience isn't a child. They're co-minus conspirators. Parking minus lot arguments, Robert reminds them, gentle and fatal. That's our ad buy. The hardest night of the week is a simple scene that refuses to behave. Brad alone in a room that thinks it's smaller than he is. He's too good for the room needs to win. David shrinks the frame until it suffocates. Brad resists. He can't not. Take 4 hurts. Take 5 learns. Take 6 understands. Take 7 is cruel in the way truth is cruel to people who tell it. We cut. We don't cheer. We nod like mechanics who finally found the rattle. On Friday, Cassandra sends a message with a picture of a tabloid headline stapled to it, some invented narrative about me begging my way into relevance. It should land like a knife. It lands like weather, noticed, survived, forgotten. I delete the image and approve a petty cash line for coffee at a community center 2 blocks away because craft service ran out of forgiveness. The crew drinks like it matters. It does. Last setup of the week, the one we've been circling like a shark circling a buoy. Morgan delivers a monologue that a lesser film would treat like a trophy. We treat it like evidence. The room does not move. The camera does not lie. He finishes. There is a beat where the air wants to clap and the soul wants to kneel. Cut, David says, voice low. He looks at me. I nod because words are too clumsy. We're at for the night. The city returns to pretending we aren't engineering its confessions. Trucks exhale. Walkie-talkies lose their urgency. I stand on the wet street longer than necessary because my bones want to remember the temperature of this wind. Back in the motel, war map, kettle, the same defeated lamp. I open the binder and cross out another line that survived on style and not on sense. I replace it with a truth that costs us, which is to say a truth worth buying. My phone lights up with a final message from Robert Tweekendoff. Come Monday, we push into the 3rd rail. Don't keep minus glove it. We won't. Monday is for the scenes. You don't survive if you lie. Monday is where lesser versions of this story flinch and smaller men ask for a gift shop in the back of the church. I brush my teeth like a person who expects to talk to God, set an alarm for an hour that has no mercy, and turn off a light that never learned how to comfort. The rain outside is now natural, not ours. It still sounds like language. I fall asleep to its peaking in present tense. Monday is the 3rd rail. Touch it wrong and the whole city watches you burn. We lock down the call sheet like a state secret. No full scene lines. No pages with the last 10 minutes written in anything but code names and coordinates. The location is a wound of land outside the city where wind answers questions no one asked. Crew, list is skeletonized. Phones in seal pouches. A decoy, unit shoots B- roll a mile away so anyone watching leaves with a story that isn't ours. David arrives early with a thermos and a silence that means velocity. Brad rolls up with a face that looks like someone removed the part of him that makes sleep work. Morgan walks the site once, measuring distance like he's measuring mercy. Everyone knows, David says to the small circle that matters, no one cheats this. We build the space with care that looks like brutality, nothing extraneous, nothing to soften, nothing to wink. Props lay the object we will not name into a box we will not open. Wardrobe chooses austerity over drama. Sound plots the angles of breath. Camera lines up like a moral argument. I'm not going to save you, I tell the day. I'm going to protect you. Brad nods, tiny, lethal. Morgan places a hand on his shoulder like a priest at a gallows. The AB calls the slate. The wind lifts once, as if the scene requested permission. Action. We don't look at the box. We look at faces learning the price of a sermon. Brad breaks, and then fights the break and then breaks again, each version more honest than the last. Morgan holds the line men like him are paid to hold, and in that holding you hear the reason someone invented the word dignity. The words we wrote months ago stop being ours and become the law of this room minus without minus walls. God, no one exhales. David doesn't speak because the take is still moving through us like electricity. He lifts a finger, the smallest directive, and we go again, this time tighter, this time with the air pulling against the camera like it wants the lens to blink. It doesn't. On take 4, a van appears at the lip of the road. Someone in a blazer steps out with concern practiced in mirrors, and a smile that says, I'm here to help you, not make a mistake you'll thank me for later. Company wanted to check minus in. He says, eyes on the box like it owes him an update, just to ensure we have options. Options, David repeats the way a surgeon repeats souvenir when a tourist asks for a piece of the tumor. I walk him away from the circle without touching him. There's nothing to check, I say. There's the thing and there's the lie. We're making the thing. I report to people who get asked questions by people who buy buildings, he says gently. Tell them we didn't blink, I say. Tell them the moment exists and that it will sell more tickets than all the options in the world. He looks past me toward the set like a man deciding whether to be brave today. He nods once and leaves with the face of a person who will either protect you or apologize for you. We get back to work. The last take lands with a weight that changes posture. Brad's voice cracks on a word that wasn't meant to crack. Morgan absorbs it without blinking and returns the only answer the scene will accept. The wind goes still as if the land agreed to listen properly. David lowers his hand. He doesn't say cut this time. He just breathes and shakes mine like we both survived something bigger than us. We seal the footage like gold. There are 2 copies when we're done. They travel in different cars with people who have instructions that read like wills. Back in town, we screen the circle, me, David, CEN, on a monitor that has no right to carry this kind of consequence. It plays. When it ends, no one talks first because language would cheapen it. That's the church, David says finally. It will make enemies, I say. Good, he says. Enemies buy seats. We move back into the city to finish what the third rail granted permission to finish. The week carries its own weather. Aston goes to clean and rehearsal and to dirty on tape to Brad tweaks our wrist, trying to orient him. We stop the clock before the clock stops us. The medic works. Brad breathes through his teeth and says, hand me the other hand to the scene. We pivot to coverage that trusts his face more than his grip. Finance spings while we're lighting a hallway that wants to be a verdict. Rain overages. Night premiums. Explain. I send them the sheet I built at 2 in the morning with a pencil dull enough to make me angry and clear enough to make them give up. We're not buying chaos. We're buying consequence. Robert replies with 2 words that let us breathe, keep going. The city tests us with its own bureaucracy. A location that was ours on paper suddenly belongs to a parade and a councilman's press conference. We detour into a building across the street whose manager loves movies and hates late fees. We reframe the scene to use the staircase that smells like tired victory. It plays better because difficulty makes you edit in your head. Midweek, the tabloid rumor we refuse to feed grows teeth. Someone prints a lie about us, softening the blow with a surprise twist that forgives what should be punished. The crew reads it on phones they shouldn't be looking at and looks at me like I can guarantee physics. I post a single sentence on the bulletin board by craft service, no gift shop in the church. Underneath, David writes amen. We slide into nights that feel like a city confessing under oath. The cinematographer, patient, exact, creates a composition where Streetleton becomes stained glass for sinners. Sound captures the hum inside a morgue that used to be a bank. Production design builds despair you can wipe with a finger. Wardrobe fits a jacket that makes a man look like he slept standing up for a month. Brad keeps finding smaller ways to fail heroism, which is exactly what we need. Morgan keeps finding smaller ways to tell the truth without admitting he's doing it. Every time the scene tempts us to be clever, David stares at the temptation until it leaves the room. And a Friday that thinks it's a verdict, the studio wants a rough cut of the first 30 minutes for marketing. We need texture, they say. We need to know what kind of trailer the audience will believe. You'll get truth, I say. Cut by midnight. No temp music that lies. We sit with an editor who shaves frames like a barber who knows you're going to court. He trims half minus breaths and adds none. We assemble 30 minutes that feel like an accusation with manners. The temp track is a skeleton, low strings, a piano that sounds like it broke itself to confess. Howard Shore is on our shortlist. The editor uses a temp key that reminds me why. I deliver the cut with a sentence attached if your hands reach for the EQ instead of the story you're listening wrong. It's not polite, it's useful. Marketing writes back understood. The quiet is loud. We're app on a street that has learned to trust us. I go back to the motel and sleep like a man who owes the morning a fight. Saturday, I drive to a warehouse where Prop has set the sermon notebooks in a row like teeth. I flip them carefully. Each page is an indictment. Each margin note is a theology. It's all pretend, thank God, and it still leaves my hand shaking. That means it's real enough to pay for. Sunday is paperwork disguised as air. WGA, SAG, DGI, rhythms. Overtime calculus. A note from legal about a phrase that could belong to someone else if we don't rewrite it by noon. I rewrite it by 10 and love it more. Week 2's first day starts with a simple shot that assures me simple shots are myths. Aid or a face, a decision. The take is technically perfect and emotionally sterile. We throw it away and earn a worse one. Finally, David resets the scene to degrees and Brad figures out how to look like a man who almost chooses mercy and doesn't. The camera apologizes for the earlier lies by not moving at all. Morgan sends a voice memo after seeing the 30-minute cut. You're not performing pain. You're documenting it. Keep not performing. I file it under fuel. Runner whispers that someone from upstairs wants just in case coverage on a different hard scene. I walk to set with a smile I don't feel and find a second camera being built like a Trojan horse. The operator looks at me, then at the floor. No second angle, I say, amiable and absolute. Notes from above, he says, and shrugs without joy. Here are mine from here, I answer. Break it down. He waits for David to overrule me. David doesn't. The second camera leaves, insulted by kindness. I call Robert, who sighs in a way that means he's picking up a surge nobody will ever see. Knowles, he texts after. If someone needs to practice saying it, I'll host a workshop. We hit a wall that isn't a wall, it's a person. AD player arrives with a resume that promises truth and a neck that promises problems. He tries to do the scene hard and ends up doing it loud. We cut gently. Wary deuce. We show him the difference between pressure and shouting by asking him to whisper and then not. Take 3 hertz correctly. We thank him for the injury and move on. Midweek again, the editor screens a rough of the first hour for us in a room so dark you can hear your eyelids. It coils. It drives. It refuses to look away. There's a moment at minute 40, minus to where your stomach tries to negotiate with your brain. I take a note, no relief here. None. David circles the same moment and writes lean in. We're the same religion. The composer meeting lands like a seal on wax. Howard Shore sits with posture that suggests harmony where lesser men hear noise. We talk in nouns because adjectives decorate and we don't decorate. Post. Wait. Smoke. Guilt. He scribbles a stave, plays a line that sounds like a thought a good man shouldn't have, and we all know he found the key we promised to find. Don't let it console, I say. It won't, he says. The studio schedules a friends minus, and minus family screening because the calendar needs a box checked. I agree with 2 conditions: no alt cards that lead the witness, and no executive summary that uses the phrase commercial lame. We get our terms in writing. Paper armor again. On the day, people who love us and people who barely tolerate us sit in the same chairs. The cut is rough enough to showbone. The mix is temp enough to remind you that silence is a color. The QA is a clinic in how honesty sounds when it's tired. A woman says she will never forgive us for what we made her feel and thanks us. A man says he wants to watch it again and hopes he never does. Someone asks if we can rescue the last 10 minutes. No, I say. David says nothing. Robert smiles the smile you use when a war you chose is going the way you drew the map. Card scores land. They are a weather report in a desert. Excellent fights too dark to a draw. Marketing wants a tagline that lies less. If you want a hug, I write it on a napkin and throw it away because I don't want them to print it. The next morning, a young exec with kind eyes and a career to protect asks me to lunch away from the building. Just between us, he says, is there a version where he doesn't do what he does at the end? There was, I say. It was a different movie. We didn't make it. He weighs the wisdom of arguing with a door. He pays the check like a gentleman and walks away like a man who will either be us in 10 years or will hire us in 10 days. We're all into the last week of principle with a machine that doesn't squeak. The hardest shots go down like truths that we're waiting for witnesses. The softest moments resist us until we remove the urge to protect anyone. The prop master brings me one last sermon notebook to sign off on. I close it without reading because I trust the hand that wrote it and because I can't afford that nightmare in my head tonight. On the final night, we shoot nothing and everything, pickups that argue for the cut, inserts that feel like fingerprints. When the AD calls that's a picture wrap, the crew doesn't cheer like a parade. They exhale like a vow. Brad hugs David and salutes me with 2 fingers like a man conceding a game he intends to win in the sequel life. Morgan shakes my hand and says, don't start apologizing in the edit. I won't, I say, and this time it feels like a promise with a signature. We strike the set until the street looks like it never told us anything. Trucks leave with the hum of a secret that enjoys moving. I stand on the curb with the last case of drives in my hand and the calm of a person who knows the next war. Post is where cowards try to borrow your hands. Post is where men like us tell them our hands are busy. I text Robert we have it. He replies then hold it. And remember the ending is still not allowed to smile. The city folds back into itself. I go home, temporarily a rented place that doesn't know my name yet, and tape a single page above the desk where the edit notes will multiply. No gift shop in the church. No relief we didn't turn. No blinking. Tomorrow the Avid lights up, the sound room hums, and the math of frames begins. Tonight, I let the quiet tell me what it wants. It wants us to keep our word. Post isn't a couch. It's a second war. The Avid wakes like a factory dawn. Our editor, hand steady, eyes that measure in frames, has an assembly ready that is honest enough to be ugly. We watch it in a room where the only light is the picture and the only noise is the sound of your convictions trying to stand. Start with the spine, David says. Everything that doesn't carry weight is decoration. We cut without mercy. A beautiful dolly that impressed the crude eyes because it admires itself. A joke that earned the laughed eyes because it buys relief we didn't pay for. A reaction shot lives because it index. I feel lighter in my chair every time we throw away something that cost us and wasn't ours to keep. Howard Shore sits in for the first spotting session with a pencil and a quiet that feels like competence. We talk in nouns. Guilt. Pulse. Architecture. He plays for notes that sound like a thought a good man shouldn't have and then lets the harmony refuse to rescue it. He marks the scene where most movies would ask a violin to lie and says, "Silence buys truth here." We agree because we came to make a church, not a lullaby. Marketing wants footage for a teaser. We deliver 30 seconds that say tone instead of plot. Rain like judgment. The city is howling. A face deciding to lose something it won't get back. No muddy shots. No explanation. They ask for one more beat where hope blinks. No blinking. I write back and attach a still of the streetle twine that looks like stained glass if your conscience squints. Notes creep in, polite as termites. A junior exec floats the phrase safety coverage for the last scene the way a person says umbrella when they're already inside. David doesn't raise his voice, he shortens his sentences. No, alt. He says, I send an email titled Principles in Post 3 lines long, CCing whoever needs armor, no gift shop in the church. No relief we didn't turn. No alternate attending. Robert replies with a single word that means we're not alone confirmed. The MPIA screening is a different kind of math. We book a slot, sit in the back, and watch strangers build a rating out of our sins. The concerns are exactly what you'd expect, and nothing like you fear, not the explicit, but the inexorable. Toad, one of them says, almost admiring. Relentless. The list of suggested trims lands with bureaucratic precision, shave a breath before a reveal, steal 2 frames from a cut that lingers like a hand, reduce an off-minus screen sound that feels like guilt chewing. David and I step into the hallway and decide in one look. We take a breath off a reveal because the moment doesn't need help. We steal 2 frames where the camera looked proud of itself. We leave the sound because the honesty isn't gratuitous, it's the bill. Back in the room, we make our case without Petrus. We get our R. I text Robert reading secured. No lies added. He answers like a man who expected to win and likes being right good. Lock tone. Color is its own servant. We sit with the colorist in a room that believes black is a color. So Yumstreetle to bend towards something sick without becoming caricature. Skin learns to confess under rain. We lean into a near minus bleach look that makes the city feel like paperwork stained by coffee and regret. The temptation to make pretty dies on the screen, pretty would be a lie. ADR days arrive the least glamorous part of telling the truth. Brad whispers 3 lines the night stole from us. Ray pronounces a city name as if it were a confession. Refuses to sweeten anything. Morgan replaces a syllable he let go lazy because accuracy is the dignity he asked us to protect. Foley tap dances in hell, wet fabric, and notebook page, a small object, set down like a verdict. Trailers breed arguments. Marketing's first cut is skilled, smart, and 5% dishonest. It hints at redemption we don't sell. We sit in the dark bay and swap beats like surgeons trading instruments. And not a question, I say, not a promise. Lose the music sting here, David says. It feels like a hand on the audience's back. We keep the shot of rain turning a street into a confessional. We cut the almost minus smile that wasn't really there, it looked like permission. The final button is quiet enough to be loud, a look that says the city won't apologize. Publicity wants a logline and a tagline. I give them a sentence that doesn't pan to detectives hunt a sermon with bodies for punctuation. For the poster, no face is that big. A silhouette under rain, a city like a bruise, type that looks stamped, not designed. Tagline debates die in email. We let on one that doesn't lie some sins don't wash off. Calendar talk becomes religion. We argue for October with numbers and superstition. Counter-program spectacle with consequence. We present 5 comps that prove conversations, sell more tickets than confetti. Robert circles the date that feels like a dare. This slot is a sentence, he says. Let's rate it. Friends, minus and minus family screening, round 2. The cut is tighter, the mix is honest, the color grade holds. We hand out cards we wrote ourselves because the studio version tries to lead the witness. What stayed with you? What didn't blink? The lobby after is exactly the marketing plan we promised, parking minus slot arguments, whispered admiration from people who swear they don't like dark films to apologies we don't accept. A veteran producer with the kind of face that has seen alias that killed careers leans in and says don't let them send your edges. I tell him there's no sandpaper left in the building. He smiles like a man who once lost that fight and is glad someone else didn't. We lock picture. It's an act as final as any marriage. The editor hits the keystroke that makes the cut the cut. David signs the form the guild requires and the soul already knew. I take a photo of the timecode display not for social, just for the part of me that needs to remember what we did when we could have failed by being careful. Mixed days. Howard brings a cue that sits under a scene like a courtroom waits for a verdict. We take it down 2 decibels so the silence can carry its share of the weight. 8 or closes and sounds like a judgment rendered. A breath lands where a speech would have gone in a lesser picture. We print stems that feel like architecture. The trades begin to circle. Rumors harden into headlines with question marks. Fincher's new thriller too dark to sell good. Sell the question. We give exactly 1 interview. Both of us, no smiles, no apologies. We made a film that respects consequence, David says. We're not competing with fireworks. We're competing with memory. The reporter blinks like he didn't know that was allowed to be an answer. International deliverables try to mug us with paperwork. Subtitles need nuance, not synonyms. We sit with a translator who treats idiom like explosives and lines like law. The sermon survives the trip into 3 languages because the math remains the same. Sin counts in any alphabet. A last-minute note from someone above someone a request to consider a discussion guide for sensitive audiences. I write 1 sentence and send it to legal so fast my keyboard feels used. Discuss why the film refused to lie to you. Robert writes back, approved. The request retreats like a tide that never meant to reach the steps. The MPI calls again with a clarification. We show up with the calm of men who already paid their bill. They ask for 2 frames back, we give them 1 because the cut breathes better. They sign the paper that lets us ship. The ICP creation is alchemy with hard drives. What you see in a theater that flexes its speakers like a gym mirror. The image holds. The blacks don't betray us. The rain still speaks a language we invented. The head tech checks a box that means our work can leave this room and exist in the wild. Exit strategy, advanced screenings for critics we respect, and loud denials for anyone who asks for a happy hint. Publicity preps a junket with a simple rule: no one gives away the last 10 minutes and no one apologizes for the first 100. Brad sits in front of a step minus and minus repeat and answers the way a grown man should. It's not cruel, he says. It's accurate. Morgan smiles like the sun has weight and says, we don't tell you what to feel. We tell you what happened. Cassandra texts the day the first round of reactions hits. So it's a downer. Figures. I type and delete a dozen things I could live to regret. I settle on nothing. The silence is the sentence. Final marketing review. They screen the finished trailer in a room full of people whose jobs depend on guessing appetite. The lights come up. No applause. Good. Someone clears a throat and says, it feels like a dare. Robert says, we like dares. The media plan pivots toward conversations we can't buy, only spark. We set up the first critics screening like a controlled detonation. The room is a mix of curious and ready to pounce. The lights go down. For 2 hours, no one leaves to check their phone. When the credits hit, 3 people try to stand and sit back down because the film didn't hand them legs. A columnist I've read since I was a kid shakes my hand and says, I hated how much I loved it. That's a blurb that's also a diagnosis. In the last meeting before release, someone trots out a choice to prove audiences want sugar with their medicine. I push the chart gently back across the table. We're not prescribing, I say. We're reporting. David nods like a judge who already wrote the verdict before the trial because the law was never confusing. We ship actual drives in actual crates to actual theaters with real seats where strangers will make us honest. I watch the courier tapes disappear into a van with hazard lights and feel something I haven't allowed since the motel relief that we built the church we said we would and didn't sell canes in the lobby. I go home, rented walls, a desk that knows my elbows, and sit in the dark with a single page above me. The ending does not blink. My phone buzzes a text from Robert. Prince landed. Friday is a sentence. Another from Howard break a leg. The silence knows what to do. David sends a period. That's all. It's enough. On the eve, Los Angeles smells like jasmine and wet concrete again. The city doesn't tell me anything. It gave me a past I refused and a present I fought for. Tomorrow, it gives me the only verdict that matters: a room full of people who didn't promise to love us, deciding they can unsee what we showed them. I set an alarm I won't need. I lay down and stare at the ceiling like it might tell me a kinder story. It doesn't. Good. I didn't write one. We has to be judged. We will be. Opening day doesn't start. It loads. I'm awake before the sun remembers the code to the sky. I make coffee that tastes like a dare and stare at the single page over my desk. The ending does not blink like it's a lock I've already picked. Tino. Boon. Matinee, a theater in the valley where the carpet believes in crimes. I sit in the last row where regret usually hides. Couples wander in with the posture of people expecting nothing and willing to be wrong. No trailers that lie. Lights down. Our rain speaks first. The room learns the film and stages curiosity, discomfort, agreement. The first laugh isn't a joke, it's a blood minus pressure check. When the ending arrives and blinking uninterested in permission, the credits roll into a silence that has weight. A woman whispers, oh, like a confession. A man stands, sits back down, then stands again because the film didn't leave him legs. Outside, the sky is uselessly cheerful. I text David it landed. He replies with the punctuation he favors when we're working. New line screening room. The projection is choose anxiety like gum. Marketing watches the first afternoon crowd count trickle in on a dashboard that thinks it knows appetite. The numbers are modest and smug. Evening will tell you who you are, Robert says, and pockets his phone like he's holstering it out. 3P. A critic we didn't court posts severe. Controlled. The kind of ending that respects consequence. I don't retweet it. I let it breathe in the algorithm the way a rumor that wants to be true breathes. 5P. The first sold-out text arrives from a box office we didn't bribe. 6 more theaters report the same in cities that don't usually agree. Per minus screen averages begin to look like a decision instead of a hope. By 7, the line outside the ArcLight curves like a sermon. I pace the sidewalk with strangers who don't know I put this weather overhead. A kid in a hoodie says to his friend, they say it doesn't blink. The friend says, good. I don't smile. I inventory, we said a sentence. People heard it. 9 minus 30. New line calls a warren, not panic. Velocity. Finance watches numbers like medics watch pupils. Distribution runs scenarios. The way chess players see ahead, second minus wave screens unlocked. Late shows added. Cities that pretend they're not night markets remembering they are. Marketing tweaks. Nothing. We'll regret. The conversation is the campaign, I say. Stay out of its way. Midnight. Friday closes like a book that wants a sequel. The number lands on the table and sits there with its arms crossed. It's not fireworks. It's a footprint that means the second step will be louder. Robert leans back, satisfied that caution lost. We're not chasing coverage, he says. We're feeding lives. Saturday morning is churches and soccer and people who swear they don't like dark films until they hear a friend can't stop talking. Noon numbers leap. Afternoon turns the leap into a habit. Evening invents a new ceiling. The graph looks like a heart learning it's allowed to run. Brad calls from a lobby in New York where Paul started 3 seconds late because the ending took 3 seconds of air. They listened, he says low. They left angry at the right things. Good, I say. Anger buys Monday. Morgan sends a line that I'll keep forever. The audience walked out quieter than they walked in. That's respect. Howard texts a bar of notation like a joke. Only 5 people understand and I understand it, so it's love. Cassandra tries again, screen minus, capping a tabloid headline that wants to own my narrative. Enjoy your downer, she writes. I do something I didn't know I was fully capable of until now, nothing. The silence is my adult supervision. Saturday midnight. The number is bigger. The number grows teeth. The number starts 2 dragged adders across the floor by their collars. I let my body register it by loosening my shoulders for the first time since the motel. Then I tighten them again because Sunday tests faith. Sunday mat, innies float. Evening holds like a bridge we over minus engineer. I leave a theater where the audience stayed through half the credits not because of a Marvel habit, but because they couldn't move. In the parking lot, a couple argue softly about blame as if it were a candle that would go out if they raised their voices. That's our ad spin. We close the first 3 days ahead of a number that let me sleep last week. No tide bows itself. We tie it. Weekend strong. Word of mouth noisy. Ending still not smiling. Robert's message is a shrug disguised as a benediction. Let it roll. Monday. Industry press invents a narrative about counter-programming surprise. I don't correct them. Surprise us all you want as long as you keep counting. The drop is gentle. The noon show is full of people who avoid crowds and also comfort. The evening show has a row of cops who do not clap. That feels right. By Wednesday, the 7-day tally puts oxygen in rooms that didn't know they were hyperventilating. 40-7 is a real word. Finance stops looking for the trapdoor and starts looking for extra chairs. Distribution pushes screens like someone found a lever in the right wall. International starts asking for materials they ignored last week. I send them the trailer that refuses to lie in a note that says, subtitles preserve the sermon. The notes change flavor. Maybe we can issue a statement contextualizing the ending? A well minus meaning mind suggests, as if context is a warm blanket. The film is the context, I reply. Let people argue with the screen, not a PDF. David and I sit in a dark booth and watch the rolled minus out cut on a weeknight to remind ourselves we're not tracking a stock, we're guarding a church. The audience is lean and focused, a late show crowd that doesn't scare easily. The ending lands and a man in the front row says very softly, Jesus. We didn't ask for religion. We built one anyway. Next morning, the studio cafeteria treats me like a person the calendar recognizes. Assistants who used to hand me water now ask me for it. An exec who bet against us without saying, it says it with a handshake. I don't take victory laps. I bank leverage. Awards chatter tries to flirt with us. We don't flirt back. If we earn a seat, we'll sit, David says. But we didn't build this to give a speech about it. I write a single sentence in a document called If We Must Talk, We Respected Consequence. We keep feeding the second weekend new screens in cities that announce their indifference until they're first in line, calibrated media buys that don't promise what we don't deliver. Marketing wants a TV spot with a gentler heartbeat. Aired after 10 p. Boom. I say, people should meet us in the dark. Friday 2 lands with the heaviness of a repeatable fact. The hold is real. The shape of the curve says we made a thing that travels by mouth. A rival studio head, who once told me he loved hope as a business model, emails congratulations. Brutal. I reply, accurate. A late minus night. Host asks Brad to laugh about how grim we are. He doesn't. He says sometimes the truth is the joke. We text him a thank minus you he doesn't need. In the middle of numbers, life insists on being life. The motel calls to ask if I'm ever checking out or if they should name the room after me. I check out. I keep the keycard. I will never use it. I need the souvenir. New line schedules a full minus team meeting that feels like someone drew a circle on the floor and invited everyone who helped. Robert arrives late and plays two things he rarely does together. We did the adult thing, he says. We told the story right and the audience did the math for us. The room smiles the way professionals are allowed to when the spreadsheet agrees. Next, he asks, eyes on me because I wrote the sentence he believed. You carrying another church in your pocket, or do you want to sell a laugh to remind us we're not dead? I want to make money laugh, I say. Something wicked that wears a grin. Small money, big footprint. Bring pages, he says. But first, let the sermon run. We do the things studios never remember to do nothing. We don't flood the zone with our faces. We let the movie talk like a person who doesn't need to raise his voice. The weak and three hold makes strangers call this luck. It isn't. It's the harvest from refusing to lie. Cassandra leaves one more voicemail that starts with congratulations and ends with you'll still regret it. The part of me that used to answer is busy. I delete it and go back to the room where editorial is building international versions carefully enough to smuggle intention through a dozen customs officers. International opens a week later like a set of coordinated pulses. London leans in. Paris argues in the parking lot with style. Seoul listens harder than anyone and smiles least, which I take as admiration. The ending lands in languages that don't share our idioms because consequence doesn't need a translator. We cross a number that means the film will live past us in accounting memories. The crew group chat that never used to exist now bursts with photos of marquees we didn't rent. Morgan sends a note shaped like a benediction, keep telling the truth. It's cheaper than lying and more expensive to carry. On a Tuesday night that feels like a reward no one can schedule, I walk into a showing alone and watch with strangers. The guy next to me eats popcorn like it owes him money. The woman at the end of the row writes in a notebook during the sermon scenes, maybe a teacher, maybe someone keeping score. When the ending arrives, they all do the same human math with different faces. The lights come up. No one claps. They don't need to. They look organized. Consequence rearranged their furniture. Outside, Los Angeles smells like jasmine again because it always does when it wants to pretend it's gentle. I stand on the sidewalk and let the noise arrange itself into a kind of music traffic, conversation, someone laughing wrong. My phone vibrates with a text from Robert, you were right about the parking lots. Another from David, no blink. I walk past a church and smile, not because I need permission, but because I got it from work. Inside, a light is on for nobody in particular. I think about the next script, the one that smiles with teeth, and how to spend this leverage without spending my spine. Back home, rented walls that are starting to learn my name, I tack a new sheet under the old one. We respected consequence. Now we weaponize delight. I turn off the lamp. The city keeps talking fluently in rain and asphalt and the faint music of people trying to be better than their instincts. We gave them a mirror. They used it. That's the job. Tomorrow, I start writing the laugh. Tonight, I give the quiet my chair. Success doesn't knock. It walks in like it owns rent day. Monday after the opening, the spreadsheet looks like a heartbeat that discovered caffeine. Distribution adds late shows. Exhibitors ask for more screens with the tone of people who think they're doing us a favor. Robert smiles with the corner of his mouth that only moves when money agrees with taste. Hold your nerve, he says. Don't let anyone tell you what work was an accident. We schedule a few cues because conversation is our currency. The rooms are full of people who came for the ending and stayed for the weather. Someone asks me if the film is a warning or a mirror. Mirrors warn, I say. Press leans in like it's been waiting to be treated like an adult. A long form piece arrives that reads the movie instead of diagnosing it. Late minus night pundits try to make Brad giggle at grief he refuses gently. Morgan sits in a chair across from a host who loves redemption arcs and says we didn't write one. The audience claps because honesty sounds like percussion when it's rare enough. The studio upstairs does the math. No one likes to admit break minus even before week 3 if the legs behave and international doesn't pretend we're optional. Finance, newly brave, pitches a victory lap disguised as prudence. Leverage now, they say. Lock the next one. Robert calls me into an office that smells like wood and the memories of men who tried to be braver than their bosses. You want a first minus look? He asks, direct, respectful. We'll pay you to think. We'll pay you more to shoot. Final cut under a number that doesn't embarrass either of us. Put the number on paper, I say, and put 3 words in the contract. He waits. No, alternate attending. He smiles the way you do when a wall falls in the right direction. I'll get legal there, aspirin. By Wednesday, the 7-day number is a sentence that forces polite people to use verbs like surge. International schedules move closer. A streaming platform that used to treat theatrical like a quaint hobby circles with an offer for a quick window and a brochure full of adjectives. I tell them the window stays wide enough for the parking minus lot arguments to do the marketing for us. We don't throw the party and leave early, I say. Think of the bump, the reps suggests. I say. It's called legs. A junior exec tries to earn a badge by asking for a broadcast minus, safe version that's often one SARE. David doesn't raise his voice. If a network wants the film, he says it wants the film. If it wants permission, it can ask its priest. I write any mail subject line so clear it sounds like stone, no broadcastle. Legal replies with the same word Robert used when he stopped fights we didn't need confirmed. The composer's album drops and does the exact thing it should. It makes people who love the film feel seen without explaining anything to people who didn't. Howard writes me a note so short it's basically a chord thanks for leaving room for rest. I frame it because permission is a currency you don't counterfeit. A words talk arrives like weather, speculative, inconvenient, a little thirsty. Publicists say phrases that make my teeth itch for your consideration, strategic screenings, narrative building. David and I agree on a single rule: if any of this starts to sand our edges, we walk the other way. If we earn a seat, it's because the film sat first, he says. I nod because I want the seat, only if the chair doesn't swivel. A rival studio head invites me to lunch at a restaurant where the napkins think you're the problem. He compliments the movie with the tone of a man complimenting a storm for punctuality. Then he slides a document across the table, a preempt deal for my next two. The number is handsome in a way that promises to cheat later. What do you need? He asks. Respect for endings, I say. That's a press line, he says. It's a budget line, I answer and hand the document back like it's hot. I already have a home that speaks that language. He pays because of course he does. On the sidewalk, I text Robert a photo of the deal's cover page. His reply is a smiley I didn't know his phone knew how to make. Bring me your wicked comedy. I bring him a 1- pager that grins like a knife. A small -towns cam that scales up into a national joke on purpose, a hero who weaponizes delight instead of despair, a budget that fits in a coat pocket and a footprint that won't. He reads it twice in the time it takes me to drink half a coffee. Fast minus track, he says. But don't leave the sermon yet. We ride this one until the legs give out. The second weekend proves the curve wasn't a fluke. The hold is respectable in a way rival studios pretend to admire and absolutely regret. Word of mouth turns into sentences you hear in supermarkets. A barista adds a free shot to my coffee and whispers, "You heard me right." I tip like she saved my life because for a minute that first week she did. Cassandra sends a text that starts with congratulations and ends with "I know you." I type one word, "sure," and delete it. My answer is a plane ticket I don't buy, a door I don't knock on, a life I don't center. Silence is my new indulgence. A network of festivals invites us to bring the church to their stages. We accept the ones that don't ask us to smile on cue. In a QA under a ceiling that once hosted ballets, a man asks if we ever considered a version that forgives. I say, I considered never making it, and the room laughs the way a choir lets out there between notes. Then it gets quiet and stays that way because that's the real applause. A think piece calls the ending moral violence. It's meant as an indictment. We frame it on the production office wall like a poster. Next to it, a quote from a grief counselor: "It doesn't traumatize. It refuses to comfort." That one we send to marketing because if we have to spend $1, it should buy honesty. International lands with a confidence Bulls wish they had. London leans forward. Paris argues beautifully. Seoul watches without blinking and then writes essays that make me feel like I thought of things on purpose. The ending doesn't translate, consequence does. The money does what money does when it learns we told the truth and people paid to be treated like adults. It multiplies and tries to buy the next truth. Our lawyers draw the first minus look papers. I had a writer that looks like ego until you realize it's a lock, no minus safety coverage on final scenes without written consent from director and writer. Legal blinks then nods, recognizing the clause as a vaccine. Marketing pitches one last push at EV spot cut for sports. We sell Nerf, they say. I give them a line that fits between plays when the game ends, the truth doesn't. They air it once during a fourth quarter that mattered, and the ticketing app dips for 3 minutes like it forgot how to count. Good. I find myself in a theater on a random Tuesday sitting behind a couple who talk like they just met. When the ending arrives, they go very still, the way people do when words are suddenly expensive. The man says, "I wanted it to be different." The woman says, "I'm glad it wasn't." That's the conversation I built this for. Back at the office, Robert claps me on the shoulder with a hand that doesn't do that often. "You turn taste into profit," he says. "Now do it again without repeating yourself." I brought the grin, I say, sliding the wicked minus comedy outline across his desk. He flips the first page and laughs once short, approving, predatory. "This makes money laugh," he says. "We'll schedule a table read by end of month. Fincher will be jealous in the right way." "Good," I say. "He can come bully my frames." The day ends with a call from a broadcaster in Europe who wants to buy the film and the conversation. We won't cut the last 10 minutes, they promise unprompted. We want the fight on our air. I license them my favorite sentence, no edits. They sign. Some countries still know how to be adults on weeknights. On the drive home, Los Angeles smells like after minus rain and hot breaks, a combination I've learned to translate as keep moving. My phone buzzes with a message from David Howard's suite for the third act is being studied at a conservatory. We did our job. Another from Morgan, don't let the comedy lie either. I send him the logline. He replies with a period, then a call me when it's filthy and honest. I pull into the rented place that's starting to memorize my keys and tape a new card under the two I refuse to take down. We weaponize I delight. With the same discipline, we weaponize consequence. No blinking. Next week, we sit with a room full of actors and see if laughter can carry teeth. Tonight, I stand at the window and watch a city that used to scare me act like a mirror I finally deserve. The phone lights up one more time. Robert packages for awards went out. Don't do anything cute. Me, we don't sell canes. Robert, good. Keep the church open. Power doesn't change the room. It changes which chair listens when you speak. Monday, New Line's lobby tilts in our direction. Assistants who once tried mean out-tried for me. I don't swagger. I bank leverage like oxygen. Robert slides a folder across his desk. Everyone who passed is suddenly a visionary, he says, smiling with one corner. They want a piece of the next thing. Decide what loyal means to you. Loyal means we finished the sermon here, I say. Then we spend our win here first. Good answer, he says. Now make it expensive. Agents move like weather. My voicemail is a fruit basket of promises. CIA wants to package my wicked comedy by Thursday. WME offers a prestige corridor I can't find on any map. A manager I don't remember meeting pitches notes as if they were at SIO. I pick the team that lists, and when I was nobody and hang up on a pitch that pronounces my name like a password. We do the things success hates, we keep our rules. Rule 1, no alternate tendings anywhere ever. Rule 2, don't sell hope you didn't bill. Rule 3, spend silence like money. David meets me in a conference room that thinks glass is honesty. You want me on the comedy? He asks, not offended, not eager, just exactly tuned. I want your I2 bully my grin, I say. But we don't force it. This one can move quicker, cheaper, meaner. He nods once. Then I'll be the voice that forbids cute. So, I say. Brad drops by with cap. No entourage, a grin that knows where it's been. Your next one better be fun, he says. I owe my nervous system a vacation. It's wicked, I say. No gift shop there either, just better lighting. Good, he says. Call me if you need someone likable doing something unforgivable. Morgan emails one sentence that reads like a compass laugh hard. Aim carefully. Howard replies minus, all with a 2- bar joke in notation. I hear it and laugh in the hallway like a lunatic. It's a good week. The major schedule lunches in restaurants where the bread believes itself. A studio head who took my script once like it was a coaster now calls me partner 3 times in one sentence. He pitches an IP resurrection with a smile that thinks it's charming. Third act ends in forgiveness, he says. Third act ends in consequence, I say. We can test both, he tries. We don't shoot knives for people to fall on later, I answer, and ask for the check. He pays, I keep the spine. A-Trade prints a piece that pretends to analyze us while counting how many times it can type a cheer. I stop after the second paragraph because I don't need the costume. I need the work. The first minus, look papers arrive with the clause, I bled for no safety coverage without mutual written consent. Legal underlines it in red like we snuck a tiger into the house on purpose. We did. Publicists float whispers with velvet hands awards, brunch, guild, panel, craft, spotlight. We pick the ones that talk about labor, not gold. On stage, David says what he never stops meaning: precision is respect. We told the truth. The audience paid us to keep going. People clap like they've been allowed to agree. At night, I rate the wicked comedy like I'm carving a joke out of bone. Premise: a small minus town fundraising scam outgrows its soul and learns to enjoy the view. Tone delight with teeth. Budget tight enough to keep us honest. I build a table read that can happen in a week. I build a list of actors who can smile while stealing a country. I sleep for hours because sleep understands schedules if you treat it with courtesy. Tuesday, a streaming platform shows up with the urgency of a paramedic and the manners of a billboard. Shorten the window, they say. Ride the wave now. Our wave is conversation, I answer. It crests in parking lots. Let theaters breathe. They recalibrate to flattery. You're changing behavior, they say. I'm respecting it, I say, and the call ends when it realizes I meant it. Robert's text lands like a grin, we got the clause. Legal is dizzy. Enjoy. I forward it to David, who replies with a blessed period. Press tries a different angle interviews about lessons learned. Lesson 1, on the record, we didn't blink. Lesson 2, we charged admission to a mirror. Lesson 3, the next one laughs because laughter is another way of indicting. The second minus, Sunday gross, makes the graph look like a decision we can live with in history books. Distribution turns on the Europe tap without losing pressure at home. London leans harder. Paris argues beautifully. So writes essays that assign us homework. I do the homework. They were right about a cut we held 3 frames too long. We fix it for the international DCP, not because they complained, because they were correct. Notes mutate. A junior exec asks if we can prep educational materials for the ending. We made one, I say. It's the film. Robert forwards my email to 10 people with a subject line that should be a T- shirt, stop explaining. Screen again. Late Wednesday, the person I used to be would have called. Cassandra texts instead, coffee? 5 minutes. Public place. I stare at the screen long enough to measure my pulse. I say, yes, not for romance, not for rescue, for maintenance. We meet in a cafe that smells like roasted apologies. She looks the same and nothing like my memory, both true. She starts with congratulations that taste like metal, then pivots to inventory: the house, the accounts, the mutual friends who chose a side and were right or wrong depending on the night. I always knew you were stubborn, she says. I always knew I had to be, I answer. You don't get to rewrite us just because you wrote a movie, she says, and blinking in her own way. I didn't rewrite us, I say. I stopped footnoting. She presses her finger into the table like she's leaving a claim. You could say we were both impatient. We were both dishonest in polite ways, I say. We fix my half. There's a version of the scene where the lines become weapons and we pretend that counts as winning. I don't take that version. I order her a coffee because she forgot to. I tell her the settlement stands as signed. I tell her I owe her nothing and wish her well like an adult who means it. You'll miss me, she says, slamming a door. She thinks I'm standing behind. I miss the man who promised you better, I say. He's at work. She laughs, sharp, impressed against her will. That's your line? She asks. That's my boundary, I say. She leaves a minute later, not in defeat, not in victory, in history. I sit with the ghost of a life that would have kept me small and thank it for being gone. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzes with a different kind of past. A production assistant from our first week text, a photo of marquee in a city I've never been to, our title in letters taller than my fear used to be. We did it, she writes. I send back, you did. Thank you. Power doesn't happen alone. Neither does survival. Thursday is a gauntlet of yes, no, that tries to look like maybe. A brand wants to partner with the sermon notebooks. No artifacts, I say. My university wants me to zoom into a class to explain the ending and how audiences should feel. They already felt it, I say. Ask them. Arrival Studios creative chief asks if I'll watch their new thriller and tell us where we can go harder. Make the consequences real, I say. Stop apologizing. We lock the casting wish list for the comedy One Face the Midwest Loves. One Voice New York quotes one newcomer who smiles like a weapon. See, and sets a table read. David insists on chairs that squeak as a reminder that comfort is the enemy. I approve the invitation list like I'm curating a crime. That night, I sneak into a packed show alone. The lobby is loud with the right kind of arguments. Inside, the film does what it came to do and leaves the room organized into people who will talk to themselves on the drive home and people who will pretend they didn't. When the credits reach the first card, someone claps once by accident. It's perfect. After, a 20-something stops me on the sidewalk without knowing who I am and says to her friend, it didn't fix me. It made me tell the truth to myself. I keep walking because the compliment belongs to the screen, not to the oxygen beside it. Friday morning, Robert calls with the calm of a man who enjoys being right. Week 3 hold is real, he says. We're moving from defense to governance. 2 questions: are you ready to run a corridor, and do you have the stomach to say no to easier money? Yes, I say to both. Then pick your next yes, he says. My next yes is the wicked one, I say. Low budget, mean grin, same rules. Bring me a date, he says, and a face that sells popcorn without lying to it. We hang up. I stand at the window of a rented place that's learned my key and watch Los Angeles fake innocence in morning light. I pull down the card that says the ending does not blink and leave it. I add another under it. Boundaries are the sequel to courage. Loyalty is a budget line. We laugh without blinking. I sit. I open the document with the wicked grin. I write the first scene, like I'm cutting a rope. The cursor blinks. Item